Hi, Director Doug here once again, and I hope you're really enjoying Season 8 of Discovery Mountain. And as I promised in today's episode, I'm going to give you a little sneak peek behind the scenes as to how we build up sound effects for Discovery Mountain. And specifically today, we're going to look at the scene where Bluebirdie had to make an emergency landing. George Simon and Madam Manager were in the plane, along with Gadget, and they ran out of fuel. And they had to make an emergency landing in a lake, and there's lots of stuff involved in making that come to life. So why don't we take a look at how we built that? All right, everybody, so over here we have our timeline, as we call it, and this basically shows me all the different elements that make up a scene. Each one of these boxes is a sound, or a sound or a piece of dialogue. So up here we have, up on these three lines here, those two there and this one up here, we have the dialogue. That's Miss Jean. This line here, all of the boxes on that line are George Simon, and all of the boxes on this line represent Madam Manager. So let me just show you what I mean. So if I play in this box up here, I will have George Simon.
On to land on. Look out your side of the plane.
And if we come to these little boxes, as the cursor moves through them, you'll hear Madam Manager.
Plane.
This is insane.
Just
back to George.
Look, Jeanette.
I'm looking.
Back to Madam Manager.
Oh, dear Heavenly
back to
Father,
George.
please
Okay.
help.
So that's the dialogue, and what you just heard basically is the dialogue without any sound effects. Kind of sounds dry, doesn't it? Okay, so what we're going to do now is add sound effects. Well, all the sound effects you hear are made up of many different elements. So as the plane is making an emergency landing, there's lots going on. First, there is the engine that is not running at a steady state. It's going faster and slower and faster and slower. Well, I didn't have that sound effect. So down here, I had the sound effect we recorded of just an airplane engine running at normal speed, just running normally. So what happens when an engine slows down is the sound gets a little deeper, and when it speeds up, the sound gets a little higher. So what I did was what's called pitch shifting, where I actually shifted the frequency. So it sounded like it was a higher note and a lower note and a higher note and a lower note. And I do that with some special effects software. So this is what it ended up sounding like. And see, it gets lower, gets higher, gets lower, and goes higher again, and now lower and higher, okay? But that's kind of boring all on its own. It really doesn't sound like much. So what I added to that was the sound of an engine sputtering. And this is kind of interesting because I didn't actually have the sound of an engine sputtering. But what I did have was the sound of a fellow who was trying to start his airplane while it was on the ground, and he was having a hard time starting it. And so we have the recording of that. So it's kind of sputtering and trying to start. And here's what that sounds like. Okay, so what I did now is I combined those two, so you get this. Okay, so that's the two. So that's basically the sound of the engine. The engine's running faster and slower, faster and slower. It's sputtering. And to that, we also added some warning alarms. I guess some alarm bells are going off in the cockpit to tell Mr. Simon that there's a problem with the engine. And those are down here, and they were just basically an artificially manufactured beeping sound. And they sound like this. And waits a little more, and then we add some more. And so on, and those get put in periodically just to add some tension to the whole thing. So if you combine all that, you've got these sounds here. And that's the mechanical sounds. That's the engine going faster, slower, sputtering, the alarm bells. And if you add the dialogue to that, it sounds a little more like something serious is happening.
Look out your side of the plane.
This is insane.
Just look, Jeanette.
I'm looking.
Oh, dear Heavenly Father, please help us to find some water.
Now, what we added to the voices as well was the sound effect as if they were on a walkie-talkie. So it sounded like they were talking over the headphones. And I don't have that sound here. That was added by Danny Columbi, who does our music composing. He adds some of those final effects when he does the final mix with the music. And we'll play that for you in a little bit. But right now, it's just the clean dialogue. So, well, what happens when an engine finally stalls? Well, we actually added the sound that we recorded some time ago of an engine, airplane engine being shut off and just slowly coming to a stop. So we add that in this when the engine finally stalls, and it sounds like this. And that's the sound of the propeller spinning to a stop. And so that was added as well when the engine finally dies. Now, what does it sound like in an airplane when no engine's running? Well, you're moving fairly quickly through the air and you're gliding. So you have these wind noises. So I found some wind noise, and we just added this wind noise. And then it slows down as the plane lands, or just before the plane lands. And so that's the wind noise after the engine stops running. And then we needed the sound of the airplane floats hitting the water. And we've used this effect in the past, and so we were able to reuse it. And basically we did that by banging on the side of a furnace to get that metal sound of something being hit. In this case, water hitting it. So the sound of the impact is just this here, and it sounds like this. And rumbles a little bit as if water is being hit on it, right? We then combine that sound with some water that we've used in the past, and I basically doubled it up, so we use that as well. And it sounded like this. And there's the splash when the pontoons hit the water, and that's down here. And then we added yet another effect of the water rushing by the pontoons after the impact as it's gliding through the water. And basically that sounds like this, and that's here. And you know, that's just the sound of a stream. But that would make the same sound as if it were going past pontoons. Now, once we land, we have interior sounds on the airplane. So we have the sound of people just moving around in the airplane, you know, getting ready to get out of the airplane and, you know, grabbing their belongings or whatever. And so some time ago, when we were actually shooting some footage of a de Havilland Beaver, we recorded sounds of people simply moving around inside the cockpit. And that's this sound here. And that sounds basically like this. And that's just motion, just people moving around. And that helps it sound realistic. Now, Gadget was in the plane as well, and so we needed to have the sound of his tags tinkling as he moved around in the plane as well, and those are right here. And if you notice, it's not steady because he may move and then he'll stop and move and stop, and so it's not constant jiggling of his tags. And then of course you have him whining and whimpering. He's a little frightened, and those are down here. And there's different. We have different type of sound effects for that. Different sounds. Gadget saying different things, I guess, and that's what these sound like here. And this one as well. And over here, right? So that's the sound of Gadget and his whimpering, his tags jingling, and so on. Also, once we've come to a complete stop in the water, there's just a gentle sound of waves, you know, rippling around the floats of the plane and on the surface of the water, and those are down here. And they sound like this. All right. So basically, I mean, without the music, the whole scene kind of sounds like this now. As we're approaching the crash landing.
25 miles southeast of Discovery Mountain, unsure of exact location. Mayday, Mayday, Mayday. Charlie 1968, Delta Mike. Keep looking for water.
I don't see anything.
There, to your right.
That puddle isn't big enough.
It's gonna have to be.
Well, there you have it. So that's without the music though, and that's just all the sound effect layers, the dialogue, and Gadget, and everything we need to make the scene come alive. So why don't we take a listen from near the beginning of the scene, and this time I'll add the final mix that includes the music, and so you can kind of see what happens. You can watch it happening on the timeline, and you can hear the final mix. So here we go.
I need a lake or a pond to land on. Look out your side of the plane.
This is insane!
Just look, Jeanette.
I'm looking!
Oh, dear Heavenly Father, please help us to find some water to land on. Please help us.
Do you really think your God will help you?
Mayday, Mayday, Mayday. This is de Havilland Beaver, Charlie 1968 Delta Mike. We're out of fuel and attempting to land approximately 25 miles southeast of Discovery Mountain, unsure of exact location. Mayday, Mayday, Mayday. Charlie 1968 Delta Mike. Keep looking for water.
I don't see anything!
There, to your right.
That puddle isn't big enough!
It's gonna have to be.
Thank you, Lord, for helping us. Gadget, you all right?
I think I'm fine too. Thanks for asking.
I'm glad you're all right, Jeanette.
You should have turned this bucket of bolts into a pile of scrap metal years ago.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that quick look as to how I built up the sound effects for the scene of the emergency landing of Blue Birdie. You know what, if you stay right here at discoverymountain.com on the Director Doug area of the webpage, there are other videos with many other behind the scenes things to look at. I've done some other videos on building sound effects for other scenes. One of them was the demolition of the bookstore that Builders was tearing down in order to build the shopping mall. Another one I think was when the kids were climbing on the rock wall. I showed how some of that was all made. And there's other behind the scenes stuff that I think you'll find very interesting right here in the Director Doug area of the discoverymountain.com website. So check it out. Anyway, I hope you really enjoyed that, and remember, you can listen to all of our full-length episodes as well as all of our mini adventures right here on discoverymountain.com. Tell all your friends about it. We'll see you soon.